buonasera a tutti and benvenuti. My name is Gabrielle Maletti and I'm the Director of Special Programs here at the National Italian American Foundation. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. So at the end of the presentation, Lauren will be taking some questions from the audience, so go ahead and use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. We are recording this session, so we will be sending you the recording in the next 2 business days. And now I'd like to welcome NIAF Board Secretary Anthony DeSandro to kick us off. Anthony.
Thanks, Gabriella. Hello, everyone. My name is Anthony DeSandro, and I'm honored to present to you the Applying for Citizenship via Residency in Italy, a virtual event brought to you by the National Italian American Foundation. NIAF is a member-based, nonpartisan, and nonprofit organization founded in 1975. NIAF's mission is to preserve the Italian American heritage and culture, promote and inspire a positive image and legacy of Italian Americans, and strengthen and empower ties between the United States and Italy. NIAF is based in Washington, D.C., and we're very excited to host virtual events to share information and engage with Italian Americans from all over like never before. All of our past and future webinars can be found on our website, niaf.org. And if you're not a member of NIAF, we strongly encourage you to join us and support our mission. And with that, I would like to introduce the dual citizenship expert and attorney, Lauren Hopkins, who is the founder of Your Italian Passport. She will be presenting tonight's webinar. Your Italian Passport is a US-based company offering comprehensive services for Italian Americans seeking to obtain Italian dual citizenship. Whether you're hoping to determine if you are eligible for Italian citizenship, in need of professional review of your application materials, or looking for a company to handle your application from start to finish, Lauren and Your Italian Passport are here to help. Lauren is a practicing attorney. She's licensed in New York, Florida, and Washington, D.C. She's of Italian American descent and, not surprisingly, a dual citizen of the U.S. and Italy, rather. Lauren has a masterful understanding of the ins and outs of the Italian dual citizenship application process, including genealogical research, eligibility determination, collection of U.S. and Italian vital records, and the tricks to successfully presenting an application to the Italian consulate or the court in Rome. Lauren is a longtime friend and supporter of the foundation. For years, Your Italian Passport has been offering discounts for their services to NIAF members. So after the session, if you want to hire Your Italian Passport, please make sure to become a NIAF member first to get the discount. And without further ado, I'm honored and I'd like to welcome Lauren Hopkins. Lauren, how are you tonight?
Hi, Anthony. I'm fine, thanks. Thank you so much to you and to NIAF for having me back. We are indeed back. This is sort of fun. These are becoming regular and I really enjoy them. I feel like as though no further introduction is necessary from me. That was so lovely. Thank you so much. We can just dive right in.
Well, my pleasure. And, you know, we've done a few of these. You know, we did the citizenship in the era of COVID, navigating the consulate process. But I'm really looking forward to this one because this is really, and I'm looking at the process as well. This is kind of leaving everything behind, going to Italy, becoming a resident, and hopefully going through the application process that way. So I know a lot of people are excited. I have a ton of questions, so I'm going to get started. The first is, given the availability of seeking citizenship, you know, with respect to the Italian consulates here in the US, why might someone want to bypass that process and submit their application in Italy?
So as you have heard me say on prior webinars, working with the consulates here in the US in the Iure Sanguinis process can be challenging, to say the least. Wait times for appointments are very long. Most of the consulates here have on average an 18 to 24 month wait list. And then even after your appointment, they have up to 2 years under law to process the application, many of which take most, if not all of that time. So the process here is a long one. On top of that, like I said, working with the consulate officials can be challenging. So you can avoid some of that in the process that we're going to talk about tonight. I should, at this early outset, break this down into 2 types of residency and citizenship that it could lead to. And we're going to talk about one, but I want to just hit upon the other so that people are clear as to what we're discussing tonight.
Okay.
Yes, Italy offers a naturalization process just like the US does, where you can move to Italy and then after a period of residency, you can submit an application for naturalization, which for a US citizen is a period of 10 years of residency. You don't have to be of Italian descent at all to go through that process. That is available to anyone who makes that lifestyle move and can otherwise be in Italy legally for that 10-year period. That is not what we are talking about tonight. Instead, we are talking about taking your Iure Sanguinis application, all of that documentation, and rather than applying at the consulate that covers your area of residence here, taking it to Italy and applying there. And who can do that? What does it entail? What are the positives? What are the negatives?
So that's an interesting distinction. So is everyone eligible to submit their application this way? And in other words, I mean, is this something I can do on my next vacation to Florence or the Amalfi Coast? Talk a little bit about that process.
Right. So the short answer is no. This is not something you can do the next time you happen to be on vacation in Italy. Wouldn't that be great if we could all do that?
Yes.
Especially as travel is coming back online and we can, we're starting to pull out our US passports again and yes, Italy is back open. How fun would that be to be able to do it this summer? No. This is available to people who establish themselves as residents in Italy. Essentially, you are currently a resident in the US in the jurisdiction of an Italian consulate here that covers one state or more. There are 9 consulates plus the embassy here in the US, and you fall in the jurisdiction of one of them. This is changing that residency and presenting yourself in Italy and becoming a resident there, after which you can submit your application. So a tourist passing through Italy is not a resident and is not eligible to submit a citizenship application.
Got it. Got it. So then what are the steps for establishing oneself as a resident in Italy? Or what would an individual need to go through?
So first, yes, you must physically arrive in Italy. This cannot be done remotely or through some sort of mailed application. On that note, arriving in Italy, you will, if you fly directly to Italy, your US passport will be stamped by an Italian official, which will reflect the date upon which you entered Italy. I recommend doing this if you are considering this citizenship after establishing residency versus flying to Frankfurt, a popular first stop on your way to Italy for many of us here in the US. If you go that route, it's not the end of the world, but you will need to file a declaration of presence in Italy shortly after arriving there to make sure that there is a formal recognition of the date on which you got to Italy, not just to Europe. So be aware of that. Then once in Italy, you must have, guess what, a residence. And this can be in the form of a leased apartment, a home that you own. You can be a resident in a family member's home if someone you know is already there and willing to lend their address to you and vouch that you are a resident in their home. You cannot be staying at an Airbnb, staying at a hotel. Any sort of short-term lease is not going to be accepted. Good rule of thumb is to have a lease of at least 6 months, if not longer. We'll get into how long do I actually have to be there in a few moments, but you must have a residence. Once you arrive in Italy and you have that residence, you will appear at the comune, which is the Italian word for the municipal office in the town where your home exists or where the place you are staying exists. You will go there and say, hi, I'm such and such, and I am a new resident in town. I have my lease here today, or I have the deed to the home that I now own, and I wish to be recognized as a resident here in town. At that point, the comune officials have up to 45 days under law to confirm that A, the place that you've listed is in fact a residence, not a hotel, not an Airbnb owned by someone else, and that you are there. And they will do this by sending out a police official to that exact address to make this confirmation. They may do that on day 1. They may do that on day 45. They may not do it at all. If you are in a major city, don't be surprised if they don't have the resources to send in Rome, for example, a local police officer to check on your residence. In that case, you must simply wait for the 45 days to expire, at which point you go back to the comune, whether because the police officer has come or whether because the 45 days have expired and no one has come and that window of opportunity to challenge your residency has expired, you will go back and say,
I'm here.
That official.
Okay, that's interesting. Are there any issues aside from citizenship for me to consider when thinking about establishing a residency? Am I free to travel? You know, am I going to be subject to taxation by the Italian government? You know, what are some of those other ancillary issues we want to make sure of, you know, we kind of touch upon as well if we go through that process?
Good question. So let's break that down into the two parts. Travel, first off. Yes, you are permitted to travel. It's not as though you must stay in that house, in that city, even in Italy. You are permitted to travel just as any other resident in Italy is permitted to do so. Now, that said, it is not legal to simply come, establish yourself as a resident, submit your citizenship application, which we will get to, and hightail it back to the US. That is illegal to do and is often something promoted by various online agencies as an available route to go. Be very careful there. That is not a legal avenue for completing this process. But you are otherwise permitted to travel, of course. With regard to taxation, there shouldn't be any real tax implications that you are subject to, but be mindful of this. Yes, residents in Italy, citizen or not, can be subjected to Italian taxation. Italian taxation can be on your global income, not just Italy-derived income. It does not require you to already be a citizen in order to be subject to taxation. Now, all of those negatives out there in the open, why am I saying this is not likely? The reason being, your income is not likely to be Italy-derived. You're not going to be there in the long term. And so the chances of actually being subjected to Italian taxation slim to none. Don't let that potential legal possibility, which it is, deter you from pursuing this. This is not likely to come up in your process. There is some conflicting guidance online as to whether or not you need a codice fiscale, which is our closest equivalent is a social security number in order to complete this process. Some will say yes. Again, that will further put you in contact with the Italian system in terms of taxation. It's been our experience with the clients we have worked with who have gone through this process that it was not necessary in order to complete it. So travel, possible, but we're going to get into some caveats. Taxation, possible, not something to fear.
Good, good. Okay, so now once I am a resident or a person becomes a resident, talk us through the process. What does that citizenship application submission process look like?
Sure. So once you are a resident, you can submit your citizenship materials essentially immediately after becoming a recognized resident in town. It will be to that same comune, the municipal office, and most likely to the office of Stato Civile, civil status office, to whom you will submit your application. But let's slow down about this process because it sounds like, wow, great, maybe 45 days, I'm a resident, next day I submit my citizenship application. Let's talk about what your citizenship application looks like and how it is distinguished from your application submitted to the consulates here. In terms of what documentation is required, nothing really changes. That same set of records that you may be compiling or that an agency may be compiling on your behalf is exactly what you will turn over to the consulate. But a few things to be aware of. There are additional apostilles, that is, in most cases, a piece of paper that gets affixed to a record that makes it usable internationally, which are not required by the consulate. For example, if you're thinking I'm I'm down this road. I'm familiar with this process. Many of you may know the consulates don't require apostilles on naturalization paperwork. It is required when submitting to the comune. Furthermore, the translations of your documents must be, you may not be working with a comune official who speaks English. We'll get back to that in a practical sense in just a matter of moments. But unlike the consulate officials here in the US who are required to be English speakers, the comune official is not. You will need to have your translations pre-approved by an Italian consulate official here in the US before they can be submitted to the comune, unless you hit the jackpot and get someone who is competent in English and willing to accept them as they are. So that's the documentation. Go ahead, Anthony, sorry.
No. So that's you know, it sounds like you have to be a little lucky in the process as well. But, you know, once that application is submitted to the comune, what happens to it, and when will I officially become a citizen if you go through that process?
Right. So just to hit on one note, be aware that unlike the consulate process here, which 99% of applicants are doing in English, there's no shame in that, be expected to communicate with the comune official in Italy about your application in Italian. There should be no expectation that you are going to be able to pull this off in English, or have with you an official, an agency or someone there to act as a translator. But what happens to your application once it's submitted? Great question. So ultimately, the comune official at the Stato Civile will send it to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, where it will be processed. Prior to that, it is that comune official who will act as the consulate official would here, and who will review the documentation page by page, making sure that your family tree is properly documented in paperwork, identifying any issues, discrepancies in the records. Little asterisk there. This is one benefit of the residency process, is that the comune official is very likely to apply far less scrutiny to the documentation than the consulate officials here, who could be said to intentionally go looking for problems in an effort to stymie your application. I didn't say that. So in that sense, it's a simpler process that the comune official is not likely to apply that same degree of scrutiny. They'll make sure everything is there. They will send it off to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Please be aware that this same 2-year processing time that is available to the consulates is available to the comune and to the ministry under law. Now, why that process takes so long at the consulates here is because of the sheer number of applicants, and the workload on the consulate officials' desks is what slows down the processing process. There, you're very likely to be the only person in town submitting a citizenship application. So in that sense, it may move more quickly through the channels. In fact, it's very likely it will move more quickly through the channels, but you should be prepared to have to be in Italy for up to 2 years. On that note, some of you may be saying, well, how am I going to legally accomplish that? My US passport allows me to stay for 90 days. Enter the permesso di soggiorno, which is essentially a visa extended to you by officials in Italy versus consulate official here. And so they will continue to renew your permesso, the reason for it being your pending citizenship application and your existing residency until your citizenship application is complete. So that's what will legally allow you to be there. And just please be aware you could have to be there for up to 2 years.
So, you know, so once my citizenship is official, how talk about the process of getting that passport, you know, once you do become a citizenship through this process.
Good question. So at the end of the process, you will receive some sort of notification that your citizenship has been made official. At that point, you have a choice. You can decide, okay, I really am staying here. I am a resident in town. I have this residence. I will continue to be here in Italy. at which point the comune will be able to assist you with the application for the passport and issuance of it. Or you can return to Italy, you can return to the US, and you can register with the AIRE, which is the AIRE, which is the acronym for essentially the network of Italians. You would now be an Italian living abroad. Living in the US is considered living abroad for Italians at your consulate that covers your area of permanent residence. Once you register with the AIRE and you are now established as a resident back in that consulate's jurisdiction, you would book a passport appointment and follow the very basic steps for appearing in person there and collecting that booklet.
So what if my case happens to be one that must be heard by the court in Rome rather than the consulate? For instance, if it violates the 1948 law, am I eligible for this process? And quickly maybe touch upon the 1948 law, which you've talked about on other webinars, but maybe just for people who haven't understand that process and answering that question.
Absolutely. So 1948 law is essentially when you are seeking citizenship through a woman who is attempting to pass citizenship to a child, be it you or an intermediate ancestor who is born before January 1st of 1948. This is a little hitch in Italian citizenship law that prohibits you from seeking citizenship at the consulates, albeit you can still submit an application of that nature to the court in Rome. You cannot get out of the court process in Rome by declaring yourself a resident in Italy and submitting your application there. The comune will act as the consulate. The comune can only do things that the consulate can do. They cannot do things that the Italian court could do. So if your case is one of these unusual ones where you have been advised you cannot submit this application at a consulate here, this process that we're talking about today is not a solution or a workaround to that. You still have to go forward with the court process you've been advised to follow.
Okay, that's important. And then if I submit my application in Italy, can then my children submit their application at the consulate in the US with me as their Italian citizen ancestor at that point?
No. So this is something else to be mindful of. So you can do this as all of you as residents in Italy. If the whole family moves to Italy, sets up residency, yes, you can all be simultaneously recognized as citizens by submitting your collective documents to the comune. If a parent does this while the other parent stays at home with the kids, for example, no, the kids will not be then permitted to go into their local consulate and submit an application saying, here's proof that my parent is an Italian citizen and I am here to present the documentation that links me to that parent. Just like the consulates here do not honor one another's work, as in your brother lives in Boston, you live in Los Angeles, and you want to rely on a single set of ancestral documentation.
Yes, doesn't work.
Do it.
Yeah.
So is it true that you cannot submit documentation to the comune wherever in Italy and then have family members try to piggyback off of that and bypass submitting the ancestral documentation at a consulate here in the US? So this applies to whether that's your children, whether those are your siblings, cousins. We won't even get into that. We know if it's already off for the children and the siblings, it's definitely off for the cousins. So the answer is no.
So this is it's a fascinating process going this route. You know, you're kind of the expert in this area, and you know, listening to some of your answers, it sounds like there's both positives and negatives. You know, to kind of going the residency route. I mean, overall, do you recommend it? Is this a viable process? You know, give us a little feedback there.
Yeah, it's a really tough call. I would say yes, in limited circumstances. If you are someone who has already decided, I'm moving to Italy, I am a self-employed person and I'm gonna do this and make this happen for myself, or I'm taking my whole family and we are going to start traveling the world, and we can incorporate into our itinerary a stay in Italy, perhaps a significant stay in Italy. then yes, don't let your dreams or your lifestyle be deferred because you want to wait out the consulate process here in the US. This is available for people to do from Italy. Another example, there are certain applications that we have had the pleasure of helping people work with, which have been challenging because of consulate officials that they came in front of, challenging because of certain discrepancies in records. And we made the decision to take the application to Italy because there seemed to be no other alternative for getting the application, which was otherwise legal, but we were simply up against a difficult character. The gatekeeper was just simply not wanting to permit this application to go through. And so use this as a solution to bypass that difficult consulate official. It can be done. Is this more costly? Yes, of course it is. You're going to have a residence, or you're going to have to work with an agency that may be able to assist you with having a residence while you do this. So there are certainly costs involved with this. The timeline is not necessarily shorter. I caution anyone going into this that if you read online that this will fast track your application, please go in with eyes wide open that is not, it's possible that this will be faster than the consulate process, but it is by no means guaranteed. So go into this knowing that it could be a timely process. It's likely to be a more costly process. And simply for a lot of people, the requirements just not, they do not comport with the rest of your lifestyle. You may have a career here, go figure. Or your family is here. You just simply can't afford to pack it all up and go to Italy, and that's okay. Citizenship is a worthwhile thing to have. It is a long endeavor. It is a winding journey. And it is definitely possible for 99% of people applying here at the consulates in the US. So though challenging of one's patience, in most cases, it would be my advice to say, stay the course, stay where you are in the US, don't take on this added cost and time. But if you're already one foot out the door and determined to do this in Italy, it is an available path to citizenship.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I have some more questions, but I better open the floor up to some of the questions from the audience. Looks like we have a ton of questions coming in. Please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen to type out and ask your questions. I'll turn it over to Gabriella, who will, provide some questions from the audience, Lauren.
Sure.
Yes, thank you so much for everyone who's sending in questions. As Anthony mentioned, we do have a ton of questions, so my team and I are quickly going through all of them, so bear with us. We may not get to all of them, but we appreciate it. Lauren, our first question from Joseph. I was born in Italy. I became a U.S. citizen in college at the age of 20 in 1981. Since I refuted my Italian citizenship, I understand I can only reclaim through living in Italy or through a grandparent. Is that correct?
He's correct as to the first portion. I'm not aware of having to do this through a grandparent, but it is correct that dual citizenship in Italy did not come into existence until 1992. So if Joseph became a US citizen, he automatically lost Italian citizenship in 1981. He automatically lost Italian citizenship under Italian law. There was a window of time around 1992 where you could simply request to have your Italian citizenship reinstated without having to first meet a period of residency. That window closed. Now, Joseph, your only option is to meet, I believe it's a 1-year period of residency before you can have your Italian citizenship reinstated.
Wow.
Wow. Okay. Thank you. Another question comes from John in regards to what you were talking about, how the police would come and monitor the situation at home. So if the police come out to verify you are residing in an apartment or house in 8 days, can you then go to the comune, or do you have to wait the full 45 days no matter what?
No, the former. As soon as the police check has been done, They will verify that the address you gave is a residence and that you were there. You can submit the citizenship application immediately following that.
Okay, beautiful. And another question comes in through David, and I'm sure this is going on in a lot of people's mind now that a lot of us are working from home and probably permanently now on. So David has he has valid juris sanguinis case, and he has all the paperwork. He's fortunate that his employer will allow him to work anywhere in the world as long as he has an internet connection. So would he be able to establish residency in Italy and continue working for his employer while he pursues his JS case?
Yes, I see no reason why David would not be able to do that. So the basis for the permesso di soggiorno, the continually renewed visa that would allow David to stay in Italy beyond the 90 days his passport affords him, is not linked to any sort of employment or employer. So David, it's fine to maintain employment with your employer, who apparently will permit you to be anywhere. The basis for your visa or your permesso will be the fact that you are seeking citizenship through residency. You do not need to come up with some other legal reason for being in Italy. It is perfectly okay and actually required that you make that formal declaration. So yes, David, it sounds as though you may be a perfect candidate for this.
Yeah, good for you, David. Go for it.
I know, lucky, do it.
Yeah.
Lauren, another question comes in from Jerry. And actually it came in through a lot of inquiries as well, audience members. So if my spouse holds dual citizenship and owns a home in Italy, are there any ways for me to bypass any of the established residency rules to obtain an Italian passport?
Good question.
So, yeah.
Yes, it sounds as though this person who's asking this question may not be of Italian descent, him or herself, and that's okay. You can pursue spousal citizenship. Sounds as though your spouse is already an Italian. The fact that they own property is actually irrelevant to this particular question, not necessary. You can pursue spousal citizenship whether that was true or not. We have done a spousal citizenship webinar, but briefly, the most important thing for any potential spousal applicant to be aware of is that the applicant must pass an oral and written language exam. And the level that must be met is commonly referred to as B like boy, 1 level proficiency. So B1 level proficiency, which is neither as basic as ordering a pizza in Rome, nor as challenging as writing a doctoral thesis. It is solidly somewhere in between. So if you feel as though this is something that you can, an exam that you can pass, you don't have to establish residency in Italy at all. You can do the spousal process right here through your consulate that covers your area of US residence or wherever you happen to be.
That's great. And actually, Lauren, just to piggyback on that question, you said the proficiency, the Italian proficiency exam. So if one would establish the residency, excuse me, the citizenship via the residency, they don't need to pass an Italian language exam, do they?
No, so this is true of all Iure Sanguinis applicants. Anyone eligible for recognition of citizenship by descent, whether they intend to submit the application at a consulate here in the US or to establish residency and submit their application in Italy, there is no language requirement for that applicant. Those of us who have been through that process or are going through that process, under law, you are already an Italian citizen. You are having a status you already hold formally recognized. So the Italian government cannot place a barrier like a language exam on that process, versus someone going through the spousal citizenship process who perhaps has no Italian lineage. And in 2018, the Italian government did in fact introduce a language exam to that process. So Iure Sanguinis applicants, whether here in the US or in Italy, no language exam.
Okay, good to know. Marcel asks, I am a native born Italian who was naturalized as a US citizen in 1976 at age 13. The Chicago consulate told me that I would need to establish residency in Italy to reobtain my Italian citizenship. is the process you were describing here necessary? Is it recommended? And she does own an apartment in Italy, so they could actually use that as their residency. So would you suggest that is the best way to go?
So this is just like the Joseph example at the beginning. So Joseph and Marcel both were born in Italy, were Italian citizens, lost their Italian citizenship because of naturalization. It sounds like in Marcel's case, it was probably a parent's naturalization. Both are eligible to have their Italian citizenship reinstated. The process that we have discussed at length today is recognition of citizenship for those of us of Italian descent but not born in Italy. We have never formally been recognized as Italian citizens. Joseph and Marcel were once Italian citizens who lost Italian citizenship and seek to have it reinstated. Yes, that is possible. It requires a period of 1 year of residency, at which point you can have your citizenship reinstated by comune officials or the consulate here. It really matters not. There is not this submission of this ancestral documentation that we discussed that is part of the reinstatement process. Joseph and Marcel, your process is much more streamlined than the process we have talked about today.
Great, great. I am just going through these questions. Thank you, Lauren. Really quick, just out of curiosity.
I see the question numbers going up there at the bottom.
I know.
Seriously, I can tell.
Yes. Actually, Lauren, just as I'm going through these, something popped in my mind that, it's not directly related to the topic, but it is related to the Italian citizenship process. And a lot of people are asking, what is the status with the Italian consulates now with the COVID restrictions, pulling back a little? Are we seeing any more movement with the Italian consulates?
Well, fingers still remain crossed in some places. So they are all open to receiving citizenship applications or to the booking of new appointments with the following exceptions: New York, Philadelphia, Houston, and Los Angeles. Philadelphia has declared they will permit new appointments to be booked in the fall, which we think will be September. We asked for exact clarification on that, and we're told we don't know. I can't imagine that the others will extend their COVID closure beyond September or October either. It's possible that they will resume services sooner than that, but I would not be surprised to see them wait until after the August holidays. So those of you in New York, Philadelphia, Houston, and Los Angeles, hang on a little bit longer. I think we will see change in September, if not sooner.
Beautiful. Let's hope. We received a question that's a little bit curious, and I'm curious to know myself. Eduardo asks, if you arrive in Italy with documents required for citizenship juris sanguinis and submit them as such to apply for citizenship, isn't there a law that says you're automatically an Italian citizen after 1 year?
No. There is not a law that says that. So again, to distinguish Joseph and Marcel, they were already Italian citizens who lost Italian citizenship. A 1 year of residency for them would reinstate their citizenship. For someone going through the recognition of Italian citizenship process, which it sounds like this is, who is prepared to submit ancestral documentation, no, that is never an automatic process after a period of any residency. It is conditioned upon the documents being adequate and accepted as such, which you can do once you are an established resident at your comune there in Italy, which will require only up to 45 days in order to establish residency, at which point you can submit the citizenship application. It can be rejected for failure to have proper documentation, for there being significant discrepancies in the names and the dates, and those not being corrected in the time allotted. So no, nothing is automatic in this process, and it's certainly not automatic simply by having met a certain period of residency.
Beautiful. Oh my gosh, I just lost my question. I'm so sorry. Where did it go? Oh my goodness. There's just so many that are coming through. I literally had it. Oh geez. I'm sorry about that. geez. Shoot. Oh, okay. So just to reiterate, Lauren, the residency, you don't have to necessarily purchase a property. You can be renting, correct?
Correct. Yes. Having a leased apartment is okay. Staying with family is okay.
Yeah. And then do you get like some kind of like residency card once you establish that residence?
Yes. You will be given written confirmation that you are a recognized resident in town. Yes, that will be officially done in writing for you.
Beautiful. That's great. Let's see. Anthony, do you have any questions for?
No, I mean, the interesting thing I was thinking about here is, and, I know this is going to be potentially a future topic, and we touched on this before, but you could really kind of bring together buying a property for like $1 or one of these, small little towns and become a resident there and, get to know the people and, kind of one of these great small towns up in the mountains and go through the process that way. So,
yes, good
exciting
segue,
to start
Anthony.
thinking about it.
Yes, excellent segue. That is the July webinar. It's sort of, we're going to really cut through the same reiterated things that you can find online about that process and get down to, all right, what works, what doesn't work, should I embark on this at all, etc. But yes, you're correct. You could buy a €1 property, assuming it is habitable. Chances are it is not. You could live in it and declare yourself a resident in that town and submit your citizenship application there. Yes, that's correct.
Or you could splurge and go with a €10 property. I mean, you just have that kind of cash that you want to just go a little, a little mansion.
Yes, exactly.
Speaking of which, Lauren, do you find that getting a property in a small town is, the process is quicker or it's slower than whereas if you were to go to Rome or Naples or Milan? Is there any kind of trick there?
Great question. Not necessarily. One would think yes, that especially given the sort of the popularity of these €1 offerings that are being made in an effort to repopulate towns, particularly in the South, that have lost their population significantly, you would think this would be a streamlined process. It is not the case. So as we will get into in July, go into that process eyes wide open that it could be slower than you anticipate, or you might meet a lot of dead ends before you find a successful avenue to actually purchasing one of those €1 homes that you can refurbish.
Got it.
Absolutely. And does your lease have to be a certain amount of months to qualify for the residency?
To my knowledge, no, there is no legal requirement that it be of a certain amount of months. Again, they have up to 2 years to process this application. You do not have to have a lease of 2 years. You can be representing that I will extend my lease if necessary. That's okay to do. But also be aware that it is very common in Italy for leases to be multi-year. So it can almost be harder to find a shorter term lease than a longer term lease. But to answer the question, no, I am not aware of any law that says your lease must be of X number of months or years in order to even qualify for residency. As the presumption is, you can always renew that or extend it or start a new lease if you need to be there a longer period of time.
Yeah. Okay. Well, good to know. Good to know. Let's see if I can find another. And just to reiterate, I just want to make sure you don't have to you don't have to purchase residency in the actual town of your ancestors, correct?
That's right.
No, you do not have to go back to your ancestral town. Joseph and Marcel, you may have to go back to your ancestral town. Those of you who had Italian citizenship, lost it through naturalization, are seeking to have it reinstated. It's a different avenue than what we're talking about today. I do believe that there is a requirement that the 1 year of residency be in your original town of birth. For those going through the Iure Sanguinis process and establishing residency simply to permit them to direct their application to a comune rather than to a consulate? No, you do not have to go to the town of your ancestors in order to do this.
Beautiful.
So Capri works. You can be in Capri, Amalfi Coast,
Yes.
Ravenna, one of those. Got it.
One of our audience members asked like that she heard that you actually have to provide grocery receipts to prove that you're living there. Is that true?
I have heard nothing of the sort.
Okay.
I could imagine that crazier things have happened, and I could see a comune official asking for this. Keep in mind, there is not a ton of oversight going on in this process. And so what one comune will permit versus what another comune will permit are not necessarily the same thing. You could be asked something crazy like produce grocery receipts, but no, you don't have to expect that to happen. There's no legal aspect where that is required.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, that's let's see, any more questions? I know we've got a ton. They're so hard to pick through. Anthony, do you have any questions for?
You know, the thing, you know, we touched on this earlier, Lauren, but again, have you seen someone go through this process where it really was a positive and they contacted you and they were one of your clients and you said, wow, this really worked out for them? Any experiences like that may help some of the audience members?
Admittedly, no, which is
Okay.
why I say go into this. I tell this as a cautionary tale. I have seen this work. Yes, I know that this does work. It is possible to do. For the clients that we have been involved with who went through this process, I think I can speak for all of them in saying that it took longer than they expected. They did enjoy the experience in the sense that there are agencies out there who are not necessarily citizenship agencies, but who can assist with establishing residency at a property that is not necessarily going to be a lease in your name. So, for instance, I know of at least 2 clients that teamed up with a culinary offering where they were essentially providing culinary classes and local tours, and they were in such a small comune that they had a relationship there where you could come and stay at their residence and be recognized as a resident in town. Please go into this eyes wide open that these things exist. This is not necessarily a legal channel for doing this, but it's not necessarily a channel that won't lead you to success. So I want to give everybody in today's presentation, here's how to legally do this. Are you going to find on the internet other offerings which are something less than on the up and up by which you can get this done and possibly enjoy yourself in the meantime and become a fierce chef? Yes, those do exist. And I don't want to discourage you from considering those because I have seen real people get this done that way, and it can happen. But just be careful that that is completely conditioned on the relationship between that service provider and that comune. And should that sour, the comune could easily say, you as the applicant must now have a lease here in town or must own a home because we're no longer going to recognize this as legitimate residency because something has gone south between that service provider and the comune. So these sorts of things can happen. This is probably the more common route. Very few people are doing this on their own, leasing an apartment, buying a home, have family available to go live with. More often than not, they're going this alternative route, which is, like I said, ripe with potential reasons that the process could derail, but it is possible and it could be fun getting there.
It always helps to know a guy, right?
Well, when in Italy, yes. I mean, that's the name of the game. Who do you know? Not necessarily have you played by the rules, but
Yes.
we all know.
Great. So I'm going to ask one last question, Lauren, if that's okay with you, from Deborah. We have owned our home in Umbria for about 14 years. We only go there in the summer, but we plan on retiring there and would like to spend 3 to 5 months in the summer. For residency, do we need to stay 2 years straight?
No. So I just want to make sure I understand Deborah's question. If you are intending to submit a citizenship application, be aware that you are likely not going to be permitted to stay, that you will need to stay beyond the 90 days afforded by your US passport. Will it be the full 2 years that is allowed under law for the processing of a citizenship application? Probably not. It's much more likely to be far in excess of 90 days, but far short of the 2 years. Now, I'm not sure Deborah wants to submit a citizenship application. So if you're simply looking to stay 3 to 5 months, you may want to pursue some sort of independent wealth visa after retirement that would allow you to stay beyond the 90 days that your US passport would afford, and simply you don't have to be on the citizen track at all to make that happen if that's what you're looking to do. So it really depends on what are you trying to accomplish. If citizenship, no, expect to have to be there longer than 90 days, but probably not the full 2 years. If you're just simply looking to enjoy the home that you own in retirement beyond the 90 days increments that are afforded by your US passport, you may want to consider some of the visas that are available for, if you demonstrate, I know it sounds so fancy, independent wealth, but essentially as a retired person, you may be very easily able to satisfy that. They want to know that your financial situation is not conditioned on any sort of employment in Italy that you may not have available to you. So depends on what Deborah's trying to accomplish there.
Yeah. And in those 90 days, Lauren, one could travel, you know, if they travel, let's say, to France for the weekend, does that 90 days start again? Or
No. Once your residency is established, once you go over, declare at the comune, I would like to be a resident here, stay there until the police check is done, or until that 45 days that the police have to come out expires, and then go back in and say, I've met your requirement, and you'll be given something in writing that recognizes you as a resident in town. At that point, yes, you can go to France for the weekend. You can come back to the US for a week if you need to. What you cannot legally do is say, great, here's my citizenship application. Call me when that's ready and just head on back to the US. That is what is not legally permitted to do. When I say head on back to the US, I mean for good. If you need to return there while your process is pending, yes, you have the right to travel like any resident of Italy would. So not sure I can even remember what the question was at this point, but travel to France for the weekend? Yes, go for it. Yes.
Okay, good to know. Well, that's we're coming up to our 7 p.m. mark. Lauren, thank you so much for offering your expertise. And Anthony, if you want to wrap it up for us.
Absolutely. Thank you, Gabriella. Thank you so much, Lauren. As always, very helpful and informative. Thank you again for all of the informative information. You are definitely an expert when it comes to this process. And on behalf of the National Italian American Foundation, I'd like to thank you, the viewers, for joining us this evening. We hope you learned a lot. I know I have. As a reminder, this session was recorded. And a link to download the video will be sent to you within the next 2 business days. Lastly, don't forget to check out NIAF's next virtual events at niaf.org, which, as we talked about, will include Lauren's next event on breaking down the dollar-euro homes in Italy, which will take place on July 21st. You won't want to miss it. I know I won't. Thank you again. Grazie and buona serata.
Thank you, Anthony. Thank you to NIAF. Buona serata a tutti.
Ciao.
Take care.
Ciao, ciao.